Growing up, I always wondered why my family never took a single vacation. It wasn't about being broke. There was a heartbreaking family secret buried in our past that nobody talked about. While my friends showed off travel memories and stamped passports, mine just sat, collecting dust in a drawer, untouched, year after year. The constant silence in my house wasn't just awkward, it was a hidden truth weighing on all of us. Every childhood dream of adventure got swapped with confusion, and that invisible burden shaped the way I saw the world. When the shocking revelation finally came out, it wasn't just a small thing. It was tied to years of quiet sacrifices, private emotional struggles, and choices my parents made to protect us. This whole story isn't really about missing out on vacations. It's about a hidden past, a generational family burden, and dark secrets carried in silence. The truth I uncovered flipped everything upside down. What I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family bonds wasn't the full picture at all. Behind every no to a trip was a quiet sacrifice. Behind every excuse not to travel was a survival strategy. And behind every smile was a weight they never admitted. And honestly, learning what was kept from me didn't just change how I view my parents. It changed how I see family, resilience, and the unspoken battles so many people fight without ever telling a soul. People love to talk about their idyllic childhoods. You know the type. Sunny afternoons at the park, ice cream on the boardwalk, long drives to places that felt magical, even if the destination was mundane. Mine wasn't like that. Don't get me wrong, there were moments of laughter, endless games with neighborhood kids, and the smell of Sunday dinners wafting through the house. But there was always a quiet emptiness, a soft ache I didn't understand as a kid. We were never leaving our hometown. I still remember sitting on the floor with my uncle's globe, tracing tiny fingers across continents I couldn't pronounce. Maps fascinated me. The lines felt like secrets, each country an unopened book. I would daydream endlessly about far-off places, wandering the streets of Paris, getting lost in New York's endless city blocks, marveling at Tokyo's neon lights. I wanted to be anywhere but here, yet here I was, in the same streets, same houses, same faces. Whenever I asked my parents why we never went anywhere, the answers were polite and practiced. Maybe next year, my dad would shrug. We'll see when work slows down, my mom would say. The subtle hints and excuses were almost invisible, yet they piled up over time like dust in the corners of a room. As a child, I accepted it. As a teenager, I've resented it quietly. By the time I became an adult, I realized there was something deeper, a reason neither of them had ever shared. School friends would come back from trips with souvenirs, stories, even souvenirs for me sometimes, and I'd nod and smile while feeling a small knot of jealousy. It wasn't just about missing travel. It was about watching life unfold elsewhere while my family stayed rooted, bound to routines that seemed harmless but carried invisible weight. I began to notice the contrast, idyllic childhood on the outside, unspoken void within. Sometimes I imagined a different life where our passports weren't blank, where we could just pick a country and go. I imagined my mom saying, "Pack your bags, we're leaving tomorrow," or my dad pulling out a map, plotting a road trip to where we slept in tents under the stars. It seemed like a simple dream, yet, for some reason, it was always out of reach. Even as I built imaginary itineraries with buses, planes, and trains, the emptiness lingered. I remember asking my mom once, almost teasingly, "Don't you want to see the world?" She smiled softly, almost sadly, and said, "I see enough of the world from here." My dad, overhearing, chuckled nervously and changed the subject. Even then, I didn't understand, but now I can read between the lines. That sentence, short as it was, carried years of unspoken decisions, sacrifices, and silent burdens that neither of them could easily explain to a child. But the time I reached my teens, I realized the girl was moving on without us. Birthdays, holidays, summer breaks, everyone else's lives had stamps of memories I never got to make. And yet, there was a strange kind of protection in staying put, one I didn't recognize at the time. It was like being cocooned in safety, but at the cost of every adventure I'd ever dreamed of. The idyllic childhood I had wasn't about exploring the world, it was about surviving quietly in a place that felt safe, but small. The night it all began to unravel seemed ordinary at first. We were eating dinner, my mom's fragrant chicken curry, rice, and pickles on the side, when I, without thinking, mentioned that my friend's family had just returned from Europe. My mom's fork froze mid-air. My dad's gaze fell to his plate, avoiding mine. The silence that followed wasn't the usual quiet of a family meal. It was heavy, almost oppressive. That moment marked the start of the fateful conversation that would finally answer years of unanswered questions. I tried to laugh it off. I mean, why don't we ever go anywhere? Are we cursed or something? I said, half joking, half desperate. My dad let out a long, quiet sigh, the kind that carries decades of weight and untold stories. "There are things you don't know," he said softly. And with that, the wall I'd sensed all my life finally cracked. At first, they hesitated. My parents exchanged looks as if silently debating how much truth I could handle. Their reluctance to fully disclose was palpable in every pause, every shift of the eyes, every careful word. "It's complicated," my mom whispered. "Maybe you're not ready to understand yet." I stared at them, impatient and frustrated, feeling a mixture of anger and fear. But I knew I couldn't stop asking. Something deep inside demanded the truth. As they began to speak, the story unfolded slowly, like a movie being projected frame by frame. My initial shock and disbelief was immediate. The reason we had never traveled wasn't because of convenience or laziness. It wasn't even about money in the simple sense. It was something far heavier, a hidden burden that had shaped every choice they made, every path they followed, and ultimately the life I had grown up in. My dad explained how years ago, my mom had faced a serious health crisis. The treatments were costly, continuous, and non-negotiable. He had chosen to take on the financial and emotional weight alone, ensuring she had what she needed, even if it meant giving up his own dreams. Vacations, trips, even the occasional weekend getaway became luxuries that were impossible. He said, "We thought we were protecting you by keeping you in a world we could control." The more they revealed, the more I understood why subtle hints and excuses had always been their shields. When you asked about Italy or Disneyland or the mountains, we smiled because we didn't want you to worry. My mom admitted. It was easier to say, maybe next year, than to explain that every extra dollar went to keeping the family alive. The conversation stretched on, long into the night, with pauses, sighs, and tears neither of them expected me to notice. I could see the emotional weight of their secret etched into every line of their faces. Their love for me and my siblings had dictated sacrifices so profound that the absence of travel suddenly made sense. It wasn't punishment. It was survival, wrapped in protection, cloaked in the mundane routines of a hometown life we had never questioned until now. That night, the pieces began to fit together in a way I hadn't anticipated. My dad leaned back in his chair, eyes distant, as if looking at a memory only he could see. He began to explain, in careful, halting words, the extraordinary financial and personal sacrifice that had defined our family long before I was born. My mom's illness had been severe, and the treatments she required were ongoing and expensive. They had chosen to shoulder the burden entirely, shielding us from any knowledge of the cost, the worry, the relentless strain. "No vacations," my dad said quietly. "No trips, no extras. Every dollar went into keeping your mother alive. Everything else, we didn't have." I could feel the weight behind his words, a weight that had built the world I grew up in. The family's economic reality wasn't shaped by casual choices. It had been carved by necessity, by love, and by years of quiet sacrifice. As he spoke, I began to understand the subtle ways this decision had shaped everything. My dad had turned down promotions that required relocation. My mom had abandoned career dreams she had loved dearly, not because she wanted to, but because the stress would have worsened her condition. Their lives, in many ways, have been a chain of surprising ripple effects triggered by a single monumental choice to prioritize family survival over personal dreams. I remember blurting out, almost sarcastically, "So, our boring hometown life was actually heroic?" My mom gave a small, sad laugh. "Heroic, maybe, but lonely and exhausting. We thought we were doing what was necessary." I nodded slowly, the irony hitting me. What I had once seen as confinement, as deprivation, was actually a carefully managed act of protection. Their love had meant giving up the world for the sake of our safety. It wasn't just about money. The decision had ripples that touched their careers, their social lives, even the tiny joys that most people take for granted. Birthdays weren't marked by trips or special outings. Holidays were celebrated within walking distance of home. And yet, in every choice they made, I could see a hidden thread of devotion. Every sacrifice, every no to travel or adventure had a reason. A love so deep I had never realized it until now. That night, for the first time, I truly appreciated the depth of their commitment. A sobering realization that the foundation of our family, the life we had always taken for granted, was literally built on acts of courage and selflessness. It was a sobering realization. But looked like ordinary, mundane choices had actually been extraordinary decisions made silently, without recognition, to ensure we could thrive. Hearing the truth about my parents' sacrifices didn't just shock me, it reshaped how I saw every memory of my childhood. The personal toll this untraveled life had taken on them became painfully clear. My mom, who always smiled so easily, admitted she'd dreamed of strolling through the streets of Rome, sampling gelato in Italy, or simply seeing the world beyond the borders of our hometown. My dad, the steady presence I took for granted, confessed he'd always wanted to stand atop a mountain peak in Switzerland or watch the northern lights in Norway. These weren't extravagant wishes, they were modest dreams quietly abandoned for the sake of family. It hit me how much of my childhood frustration stemmed from misunderstanding them. I had thought my parents were simply indifferent to adventure. Now, I realized their lives had been meticulously arranged to shield us from hardship. My irritation, my envy of friends' vacations, my longings for far-off places, all of it suddenly felt misplaced. As an adult, my perspective evolved into a mix of gratitude and melancholy. The reality of their choices was bittersweet. Love expressed through constraint, protection disguised as limitation. Even today, there are lingering questions I can't fully answer. Could my mom's health have been worse if my dad had pursued his own dreams? Was there a way to survive financially while still seeing the world? How many nights did they quietly grieve their lost adventures, hiding the weight behind smiles at the dinner table? And most painfully, how much of my own caution with money, travel, and life choices comes from growing up in a family shaped by a secret sacrifice I only discovered years later? The subtle ways this secret still influences our family dynamics are impossible to ignore. Planning even a small trip now carries a tinge of guilt. Conversations about vacations are layered with unspoken awareness of what was given up so we could have stability. Even as an adult with the freedom to travel, I find myself pausing, considering their sacrifices with each itinerary I draft, each ticket I purchase. There's a quiet reverence in knowing that every new adventure I embark upon is not just my own, it's intertwined with the choices my parents made decades ago. I've come to understand that this untraveled life wasn't simply a void or deprivation. It was a deliberate protective cocoon, stitched together with love, discipline, and careful calculation. My parents' sacrifices shaped not only our material reality, but also our emotional landscape, teaching lessons I only recognize now: patience, empathy, and the deep, sometimes invisible cost of caring for those you love. The weight of their choices lingers, but so does the gratitude for the life they created within it. Time has a strange way of softening even the sharpest edges of our past. What once felt like frustration or even betrayal now feels like a lesson in resilience, patience, and unconditional love. My journey toward understanding, acceptance, and profound gratitude began when I realized that my parents hadn't withheld the world from me. They had simply held it at bay to protect us, to preserve life over adventure. Their sacrifice has shaped more than just my understanding of childhood. It has shaped my values, my priorities, my drive. I see now that love isn't always loud, isn't always celebrated with trips or presents. It can be quiet, steadfast, and invisible. Their choices taught me the meaning of selflessness and responsibility in ways I couldn't grasp as a child. Every time I make a decision about money, family, or health, I carry the lessons they lived without complaint. I've made a promise to myself. The future adventures I embark on won't just be indulgences, they will be tributes. Each journey will honor the sacrifices my parents made, the years of untraveled childhood they created so that we could thrive. I'll walk streets they dreamed of, see skylines they never reached, and savor moments they had to forego. Every plane ticket I buy, every destination I visit, will carry a silent acknowledgement of their love and foresight. Forgiveness became an essential part of this process. I forgave the emptiness I felt as a child, the longing for what I didn't understand, and even the resentment that built up over years of unanswered questions. By forgiving, I found clarity and connection. I understood that the foundation of our family, the sacrifices edged into every choice, was not just about hardship. It was about love, protection, and endurance. Looking forward, the promise of future adventures is no longer merely about sightseeing or travel goals. It's about carrying forward a legacy, honoring sacrifices with gratitude, and living with intention. I plan every trip with mindfulness, savoring each moment, aware that what I experience now was made possible by choices made decades earlier. Their lives, their burden, their unseen sacrifices, they accompany me silently, shaping how I experience the world. Ultimately, I have learned that new beginnings are possible even when the past is heavy. Love can be expressed through sacrifice, and sacrifice can be transformed into gratitude and growth. The horizon no longer feels distant or unattainable. Instead, it feels like a bridge, linking the lives my parents built with the adventures I am finally free to pursue. And in that bridge, I carry every lesson, every dream deferred, and every act of quiet heroism they offered us. Looking back, I finally realized every no was a quiet act of devotion. The picture-perfect childhood I envied in others was actually a carefully guarded cocoon. Every dream of distant places I couldn't visit carried hidden lessons I only understand now. Their sacrifices weren't constraints. They were stepping stones to the life I have today. The small, unseen choices my parents made echo in every decision I face as an adult. Even the unanswered doubts I carried now feel like gentle nudges toward understanding, not regrets. I forgive the empty vacations and missed adventures of my youth. Gratitude has replaced the frustration and envy I once held. The promise of journeys ahead feels richer, illuminated by their foresight and care. Their weighty responsibilities shaped not just our home, but the values I live by. In their silence, they showed me the profound depth and subtle beauty of selfless love. Now, every new horizon I reach is a quiet tribute to the world they built for me. When I look back at the story I've just shared, I realize something important. Life rarely plays out the way we imagine it when we're kids. As children, we think everything is simple. If you want to travel, you pack a bag. If you want happiness, you go chase it. But adulthood has a way of peeling back layers and showing us that behind every decision, there's usually a price that someone had to pay. My parents' sacrifices are proof of that. And while it took me years to uncover the truth, what I've learned might help you too. First, never assume silence means there's nothing happening. Sometimes the people around you are carrying burdens they'd rather shield you from. If your parents, partner, or even siblings act distant or evasive, don't immediately jump to resentment. Try asking questions with kindness. You might be surprised by the truth that comes out when the other person feels safe enough to share it. Second, we tend to measure love in visible things, like vacations, gifts, or opportunities. But love is often hidden in what doesn't happen. A parent might give up their dreams so you can keep yours alive. A friend might bite back their own complaints just to listen to yours. Real affection is usually quiet, not flashy. Third, forgiveness is powerful. If you've ever felt shortchanged by the life your family gave you, whether it's because of money, limits, or secrets, remember that holding on to anger keeps you stuck in the past. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending everything was perfect. It means you accept what happened and choose to carry the lesson, not the bitterness. But here's the other side. Empathy doesn't erase accountability. If you're now an adult with responsibilities, don't repeat the same silence. Be open with your loved ones. Share your struggles honestly. You don't need to protect everyone by bottling up the truth. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is let others in. Fourth, if travel, or any dream, was denied to you growing up, don't bury it forever. You may not be able to book a 5-star trip tomorrow, but you can start small. Save a little, plan something local, explore a nearby town. The act of moving, of experiencing something new, will feed the part of you that's been waiting. Dreams don't expire just because they were delayed. Fifth, talk about values openly. If you have children, or plan to, tell them why you make certain sacrifices. Share the reasoning, even if it's uncomfortable. What hurt me most as a child wasn't that we never traveled. It was that I didn't know why. The unknown creates resentment. Communication creates understanding. Finally, gratitude is a choice. It's not about denying the pain or glossing over what you missed. It's about recognizing what was given, even if it wasn't wrapped in the form you expected. My parents gave me stability, lessons in resilience, and a model of selflessness. Now, I try to honor that not by clinging to regret, but by living with intention and passing on empathy to those around me. So here's my advice to you. Pause today and think about the sacrifices you didn't notice before. Ask the hard questions if you're ready. Extend grace to those who gave you less than you wanted, but maybe more than you realized. And most importantly, don't let their sacrifices chain you down. Let them propel you forward so your own journey is richer, freer, and filled with the adventures they once dreamed of. That's how we break cycles. That's how we honor love. And that's how we keep moving forward beyond the horizon our parents couldn't reach.